Sonofii has a dynamic drug delivery system to treat intractable soft tissue infections and chronic wounds. My name's Roberta Lee. I'm a general surgeon. I have treated many of these patients in the past when I was practicing. I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years now, and I'm CEO of Sonofii. There is a need for better wound treatment. In this example, an 85-year-old woman had skin cancers on both lower legs. They were treated with radiation therapy, but as you know, that can damage tissue. She developed chronic ulcers, which became infected with MRSA. She had weeks of antibiotic treatment, and it failed. And she was scheduled for bilateral lower leg amputation at a major academic center just up the road from here. And you can see her right lower leg is really inflamed. There's pus coming out, and she has this very ugly ulcer. But luckily, she had a friend who knew our founder, Dr. Silberg, and he treated her with Sonofii. Her infections resolved, and her legs were saved. And you can see now her right lower leg, it's completely healed, and she's a full thickness skin graft over it. She's in her early 90s now, still active, traveling around the world and playing pickleball. This is a large unmet need. You can see it's a $5 billion market in the US, bigger globally and growing because of a positive CAGR with an aging population. And the 3-month healing rate is only 35% according to the US Wound Registry. And we've identified 2 problems. The first is when antibiotics are given, either IV or orally, it gets diluted throughout the whole body. So they're very low levels that actually reach the site of infection. And that's why you have to take multiple doses. The second problem is biofilm. Now, when bacteria colonize an area, they start secreting all these elements outside to create this extracellular matrix. And what this does is it protects the bacteria. And some people think it's in 100% of chronic wounds, and there is also a huge bioburden. And it's very sticky, so it prevents antibiotics from penetrating into kill the bacteria, and it prevents the person's white blood cells from going in there and attacking the bacteria. And what it does is it stalls inflammation, or wound healing, in the inflammatory stage. And you can see here, you can put as many wound dressings as you want into that wound, but you have to treat the entire area around the wound. And right now, we're only using IV antibiotics, which are often ineffective. So we have developed a 2-step system. The first is to administer an antibiotic solution directly into the site of infection and creates high antibiotic levels there. And we measured this, and you can see we achieve levels of over 1,300 micrograms per ml where it is needed, versus if you give the same dose intravenously, the concentration was less than 5. The second step is to apply ultrasonic energy into this area. And as you know, ultrasound are mechanical waves, but at very, very high frequency. And what this does, it creates a lot of disturbance in the tissue underneath, especially with the fluid we have in there, and it disrupts the biofilm. It also disperses the antibiotic in the area, and the bacteria are eventually killed. It can also cause the antibiotic to penetrate into the bacteria through sonoporation. Now, we have results in over 90 patients. And you can see at last follow-up, the infection was resolved in 80%, and the wound was healed or healing in over 70%. And this was all with no adverse events. Furthermore, about 20 of these patients had a diagnosis of MRSA, which you know is also known as flesh-eating bacteria, highly resistant. And in these, the infection resolved in over 80%. And we have multiple physician testimonials. Here you can see an amazing result resulted in saving her limb thanks to direct antibiotic infusion. His infection was eradicated and his limb salvaged, and dramatic and unprecedented in 30 years of practice. Now, our main competition is IV antibiotics. And you can see whether you get it at home or in the hospital, it's very expensive. If they go home, they have to have an IV in their arm, and it's quite hard to take. But we have a single procedure in over 90% of our patients who had their infection resolved. And with this infection resolution of infection. It accelerates the healing, it decreases time, and saves a lot of money. And you can use any kind of wound dressing you want with ours. They're all compatible. And here's one more example. A 50-year-old man had a granite slab fall on his right leg. After 7 months, he had 5 operations, multiple courses of antibiotics, eventually grew out MRSA. And you can see this really ugly swollen leg, tiny slit for an open wound. So the wound dressings aren't going to help this person. He had 1 treatment. His infection resolved, and you can see it's completely healed. He's off his opioids, and he walks pain-free. So our market is based on a $3,000 per use fee, and if we can penetrate 40% of the 2,200 wound care centers in the United States who have very high volume, and we have a SOM of $1 billion. And we're not just for people. This poor horse here had a wound on her leg for 7 years, and she was, last 2 years, was at a major academic veterinary equine center in the Midwest. We treated her, and you can see the wound in the middle, and we treated her, and now her wound is almost completely healed. We have issued patents, and we're planning to file more as we speak, and we have a razor blade model, low-cost CapEx, and then a per-use fee. We have a very experienced team. I finished residency at UCSF. I also did a fellowship at the NIH under Steve Rosenberg. Dr. Silberg is our founder. He's treated well over 1,000 patients with these kinds of wounds. Dr. Nicolau is a world-renowned PharmD in antibiotic research, and Ron Yamamoto has over 40 years of experience in early-stage startups from inception through commercialization. We're building our advisory board with KOLs and also people in the commercial side of the business. Now we're raising a $3 million Series A round now, and this is really to get our phase 2 trial done. This is a randomized controlled trial recommended by the FDA. It'll be about 100 patients with a short follow-up of only 90 days. And because we're a drug device delivery system, we have a combination, and our drug is a repurposed antibiotic, well-known safety profile, so we can go on the 505(b)(2) pathway. And that's important because we don't have to do all these tests normally required for a new drug. We just have to do the trial. And we may get approval just after the first trial. We'll have to go back to the FDA with the results. And this timeline was built out in case we have to do another larger trial. But you can see after we launch, we expect to be cash flow positive within 2 years and have significant sales after 4. There are many exit partners in this multi-billion-dollar industry. They're all well known, but look at the bottom right corner there. I guess left, your bottom left corner, you can see Coloplast acquired Caresis in 2023 for $1.3 billion, and they had only had $85 million in revenue prior to that. And they sell an acellular fish skin as a wound dressing, and they have 44% wound healing after 16 weeks. So there are many reasons to invest in Sonofii. They're all listed here. Importantly, we have human data with proof of concept, no adverse events, and we're ready to move on to our randomized controlled trial. So thank you very much.